Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Evolve customer webinar for the mechanical update and Q&A. If you're looking for electrical, that will be tomorrow at the same time. I am joined today by a few applause product experts, including Adam Heon, Jason Earl, and Andrew Somerville, our product managers. We've got on the call Alex Siebert, a customer success manager, and Amber Zinke, director of pre-sales and customer success. And I am going to hand it off to Adam Heon, who is going to give you all the details on the latest 6.2 update.
Thanks, Marina. Alex, did you want to cover anything before I get into this?
Nope, all good. Just figured
Okay, cool.
6.2 is probably the most important.
Awesome. All right, let me share my screen here. All right. So as Marina said, we did send out the 6.2 update. I believe yesterday it went live. So you can access that through the downloads page on our website. The installers are posted there. You can click here for the release notes. I will go through a bunch of this stuff on this call, what I can cover, but please feel free to review those notes. Also worth mentioning is the Evolve sample files. We posted an update to that as well that goes along with this release. So this is going to be the model that I'll use to just kind of show some of these examples. So know that you can find that through the admin module on Foresight, and you go to company properties. If you are not an admin or don't have access to the admin module, then just reach out to your company admin for access to these, but they can basically come here and download those files. I'm going to open up my chat and my Q&A. So if anybody starts posting any questions, I'll try to get to them as they come in. So just bear with me. Oh, yeah. So we are looking into that. I don't have an ETA on that. Hopefully next call I'll have a better answer for that, Matt. So I don't know if people can see these questions or not, but the questions about spooling on views that are not Project North, I guess, or straight, straight square to the view. Basically those views come in crooked, or they come in straight, but the view is crooked. So yeah, we are looking into that. I'll hopefully have an ETA or some more info next time. All right, so jumping in to the sample model here. I'll go through some of these, what's new in 6.2, and then I'll go through some of the improvements that we made. Let me pull this over on my other screen. So first one to show is we did introduce the systems family function. This is an electrical feature that we have built in that we just made into a core feature. What you'll see when you open this is the different tabs for different system families. This is going to be all native Revit families: duct, flex duct, pipes, flex pipe. What we did, what this tool does is acts as like a transfer project standards, so that you can on-demand load your system families if you're using Revit families. Most of you guys are not using system families, but we have been getting feedback that some are mix and matching, and some people are just preferring families over ITMs. So this is kind of a first step in just introducing a method to set up a systems family config and then load it into your projects. These are all very generic systems, generic fittings, nothing real special there. But again, it's a core tool that we use and will be enhancing. When you open up the tool itself, you'll just be presented this dialog, and essentially you just hit load types if you want to load them in, and the files will get pulled into the project. I won't get into the details of configuring this. The help doc for this will explain some of this, but there is a configuration which basically allows you to customize exactly what this is and what files come in and all that kind of stuff. But it's still very new. It's not fully built out, so it's not worth, I think, exploring too much into it, but just know that's what that feature does. Let me pull up a 3D view here. And let me just hide this out. All right, so another feature is the find elements command that's found inside of our tools. So you'll see this with prefab manager, I think locations, point manager, probably somewhere else that I'm forgetting, but basically allows you to select something and click find, and it brings you right to that element and it selects it. So this is going to be very similar to our find elements utility, which will query a model and find models, but or find elements. But now we've just layered that into the manager tools. So if you're coming into points, you could find a point and say find, and it'll select it and find the point. Okay, another one is a new utility for exporting. So I'll go in a little detail on this one. I'll fire it up here. So the intent behind this tool is to either give you an option to on-demand bulk export views or sheets in different formats, or you could create a rule or a series of rules in which you basically export predefined views or sheets. So when you first open this up, you have two grids here. So the one on the right here is just going to list out all your views and sheets in the project. Basically, it'll allow you to select what views, what sheets you want. You could make a manual selection and then continue on. The other option on the left here is to set up an element filter, which really will grab your views and sheets. So for example, I'll create one here and I'll call this export views. So you'll see the list is obviously filtered down to only views or sheets. So in this case, I'm just going to set views. And what you'll see here on my project browser on the left is I've created a couple of views with the word export in the name. I'm also using a browser organization parameter to categorize them as export. You can get as tricky with this as you want, but basically, let's say, for example, I'm going to use my view name. I can add a condition here that says view name contains export, right? So very simple, grab my views. This is my condition. And now I can hit OK. Now the use case of using an element filter is if I have level 1 and 2 here, if I add 10 more views that I want to export over the course of days, weeks, whatever, I don't need to update this at all. As long as my view name contains the word export, those files are going to be included. So it's kind of if you have a standard way of organizing or naming things that you want to export out, you can really configure this and kind of set it and forget it. This is a project level config, so you could build this into your project template and not really have to worry about it. So I have my element filter defined. It is enabled. If I decide to select options and use this, it'll just do everything I have. So I have the option to combine and mix match selections, or I could do one or the other. So I could disable this, and then I could just do some views and sheets on demand. So it lets you do either or both. So I'm just going to use my element filter here, and I'm not going to select anything on the right. And I'm going to go to my next tab. So the next tab labeled destination is defining two things. You're going to define your file naming convention up here, and then you're going to say, where does it go? So the naming convention is very straightforward. The default is basically what you probably get straight out of Revit natively. Sheets get numbers and names. Views get types and view names. You can also append dates or times to the files themselves. The next part is where you're sending this to. So what I can do here is in my output right now, it's just allowing for folders. Then you're going to go to a location. So I'll say, I'll do my evolve EM folder here. Now the source filter, I'll go through the tabs and I'll come back to this, but the source filter is going to allow you to actually split your files into multiple locations. So right now I'm just going to send this to one folder. But what I can do is actually send, if I had a large selection or a mix of different things, sheets and views, I can send all that up to different folders, and I'll show you how that comes into play. But I'm just going to leave this blank for now. Then we have our format. So you're going to have your standard formats here. So in this example, I have some 3D views. So let's just say I want NWC. Actually, I don't think I have my Navis installer, so it's not going to work. So I'll keep it to DWG. So you select your format and then you enable it. So if I wanted to send DWG and NWC, I could just add another line item and do the same thing here, right? So one line per format. So I'm just going to disable that because I don't have my Navis plugin installed, so it's not going to work, but I'll keep my DWG. The next tab here is our preview tab. So basically it's just showing you what is it that you're going to get. So I'm going to get my level 1, level 2 files, and there's my naming convention that they're going out as. So basically, if you had a bunch of other options here and you go to your preview, you'll see I get more stuff in here. So I'll just uncheck these. The last tab here is the various options for each type of file format. These would be your standard Revit options. Just note PDF is only supported in 22 and 23 due to a Revit limitation, and we didn't create a printer plugin for this to use other versions. So just know that PDF is not available for these previous versions. So once you have your source defined and your destination defined, the function is just hit run export, and this will push them out. Does your success, and okay. So essentially, once you've set this up once, if you've set it up with an element filter and you have a standard method, you can just open this utility up, hit run export, and it'll push them out. Now, I mentioned the ability to split files. So let's just say I want to send out package views as well. So I could come into this filter and say, view name, I'm going to change this to an OR condition and say view name contains package. Oops. All right, so now basically any view where the view name contains export or view name contains package, right? So I'm getting, in this case, 4 different views. If you go to my preview here, you can see I'm getting packages and export. But what I want to do is I want to put my export into an export folder and my packages into a package folder. So I'm going to go create a couple of folders in that same spot, just so you can get the idea here. So I'll just create an export folder off to the side of my screen and packages. Okay, so now for this output type, I'm going to change my directory here. You'll see now I have an export folder. But right now I'm getting export and package views. So what I want to do is filter this again so that only my views, which view name contains export goes there. And then I want to change this to go to packages. And so my view name, oops, view name contains packages. All right. And I'll put these both as DWG, enable them. So basically what's happening here is my source tab is grabbing all of the views I want from my project. My destination tab is now taking these views that I've added and saying, okay, export goes here, packages go here. So that's what this filter kind of allows you to filter at a second level. So the application would be, okay, we're sending prefab drawings to the prefab folder and we're sending field drawings to the field folder, right? A lot of times you just have these different avenues. If you haven't seen our 360 Sync product, you should take a look at that because this really complements that really well, which 360 Sync will then, if you sent these to a network folder, 360 Sync could push those to all your different shared folders, whether it's Dropbox, SharePoint, what have you. So it's worth looking at that as well. So if I go to my preview tab, again, just saying what I have, I'm going to hit run export. Actually, I'll just pull my folder in here. So I'm going to run this export and you'll see I have those two folders. So soon some files go into there and two files in there. So obviously you can get more complicated with this. You can do more multiple formats. Sheets work the same way as views, but that's basically a breakdown of how this works. A couple questions that come in here. Exporting MAG, a future option for project export utility. Yeah, it's a good one. Let me write that one down. All right. So the answer, Richard, not right now, but potentially future option. We'll look into that. Are you able to import, export the settings shown in the project to share with other users on a project? All right. So the question here is how do we share this, these settings across different projects, or how do you do it? So first, this is a project-based config. So basically, however it's set up in the project file, any user that goes into this file has this set up just like it is. So the first recommendation would be if you can standardize on how you want these things configured, build it into your company template so that anytime you start a new project, it's there. Obviously, you're dealing with existing jobs, so projects, so you will have to share this at first, but you can just use our export import function here to basically pull this out of one project and then have someone else import the file to another project. So those would be your two options for that. Can this be used to export for CAMDA? Currently, no. So this is going to be the file formats for this are just what's listed up here. So it's basically your kind of native Revit export functions, PDF, DWG, NWC would probably be your main ones. All right. So that's the export utility there. Any other questions pop up? I'll come back to that if I need to. Okay, so next new feature is our seismic support. So I actually have one right here, which I'll delete and I'll throw in a new one here. So this is going to be a new button in the ribbon. It does use a family seismic, works on family hangars. So if you go to your family browser here, I think it's in, just close some of these windows here. So there should be a seismic support category now, which has just a generic support family. This will have to be loaded into the project. When you do start the command, it's going to have a filter to select hangers. So you'll select your hangers, whether you're doing one or more, hit finish. This is where it'll display the family and type. You can load the family from here if it's not already in the project. These would be grayed out. Right now, the support family is just very generic, like it states. We are going to build out some more specific assemblies, like strut-based seismic support with actual strut brackets and things like that. The intent behind this tool is really just create a placement tool of some generic family. The family's editable. There's some parameters in there that you can change, but you'll see. We'll build these out in the future for sure. All right, so you'll select your family and type. The next is your attachment method. So you can hover over this and kind of see the different options here. So based on this option, it's going to determine how the placement method of the family reacts. Center rod is just that. It finds the rod and places it at that point. And then edge of strut will just do your edge of your trapeze hanger there. Your angle is going to be just your traditional kind of, the angle set off of the trapeze. This does not do any clash detection or anything right now. So it's basically like a, you want it typically at 45, you set it to 45 and you get what you get. I'll show after it places. There is ways to manually adjust this, but we're not doing any clash avoidance during placement at this time. Angle 2 will, as you can kind of see from this image, if you're looking from a plan view, it acts as like kind of a rotation angle as well. So there are times when you have multiple diagonal supports coming out off at essentially 2 angles. So you can set that. The family's not really built out to necessarily do it. This goes again to some other additional families we'll build. So we'll build some special like multi-cable or multi-support type things that will interact with this. But you can use it. You could certainly make your own family based off of ours and make something that works if you wanted to. But so we built out the feature, but we just don't have the content. So then you're going to have your same options similar to hanger placement as far as how it's going to attach to the structure ahead and distance below level, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll just keep it, actually, I'll keep it to distance below level. I'll set it to 2 inches here. So I've already made my selection. Now I've just defined what I want. I'll hit OK. And you'll see the family's placed on this hanger. Looks like I already had one here. So I have two on this hanger, 2 on this hanger. Let me see if I can rotate this thing. There we go. You'll see based on this hanger, it's shot off at that 45-degree angle. If I look at my properties here for the family itself, essentially we're just taking the calculated values and applying them to a series of parameters. The family's really doing all the work as far as how it's pivoting and the attachment elevation and all that kind of stuff. So if you find out that this hanger doesn't work at 45 and you want it at 40, you can just type in 40, it'll stretch. So the family itself really kind of gives you full control of how it looks and how it places. So the intent of the tool really is just select the hangers, place the supports. We also have some typical controls on these as far as your zone of influence. They have points at that attachment part, so you can place points or number points on it if you need to. And that's pretty much what the family is and how that tool works. Oh yeah, so the question, do the seismic supports include layout points? Yes, they do. Right on the top there, you have the typical controls of turning them on or off and then labeling them. as you normally would. Referencing Hamley Price, why are most of your park categories conduit fittings? It makes creating mixed schedules very frustrating. Yes, so the question is why on the family browser are most of these parts conduit fittings? As you'll see, this seismic support family is a conduit fitting. There were two reasons why we did that. One, we did get a lot of feedback on this topic because this was something we discussed internally when we started introducing more families. A lot of people actually preferred a unique category for these families because they wanted other ways of filtering it out. The other reason kind of comes from just content management on our side. All the families you see in mechanical are also electrical families. They were originally created as for Evolve Electrical, which is why they're conduit fittings. So it's made it easier for us to manage them. If you need to deal with schedules in this, what you want to do is use like multi-category schedules, which allows you to bring in multiple categories. Obviously, you're going to have to modify existing schedules in order to do that. Also, why conduit fittings and say maybe not generic models or something. Conduit fittings, which probably pipe fittings do as well, I don't know, but conduit fittings have some unique behaviors where you can basically rotate the fitting, that the family in any direction, X, Y, Z. Not all Revit families are allowed to do that, like generic models. You can't, there's just limitations. So conduit fittings is just a really good category for building the types of families we build. So that's why I understand coming from a model management, having conduit fittings probably is not the best thing. There is no limitation for these to be changed to pipe fittings. You certainly could modify them, but that's why we deliver them the way we do. When will we have a Clevis hanger as a family? Yeah, so we are building out more hanger families as we speak. The main limitation right now is just that we got to enhance the hanger placement feature. If you look now, there's going to be, open this up here, family. So right now it's very structured to placing a trapeze. It gives you a lot of customizations as far as the strut, position, type, size, all that kind of stuff, which is great. When you're dealing with like Clevis hangers or even potentially just single tier steel hangers or things like that, we need to build out kind of a more universal way of using other families. So we are going to address that. I'm going to try to get that into our kind of 7.0 release, which would be the next Revit version, you know, springtime timeframe. But that's kind of where we're at. We're just going to build out. We got to enhance the placement tool to be more generic, more universal. Then that kind of opens it up to a lot of other families. All right, I'm just going to check some of these off here. All right, so that was seismic. Let's see, the next one are the one thing you'll notice with 6.2. Let me pull up parameter sync. When you pull up some of our utilities or other tools that have like exporting options for rules, you'll see the icon changed. What we have now are it's a more robust export. So when you pull this up, you kind of have this option to now multiple select things. The value in this is it will grab code-dependent features. So let's do it this way. Let's go through profiles. See if it has anything here. Nope, I know what I want to do. I want to go to reports, sorry. Okay. So when I pull up a report and I want to export this, reports are all connected to data profiles. That's what drives the information. So when I select a report to export, I also get the corresponding data profiles. So essentially it's a more robust tool, which allows you to kind of just export the things that you want and then everything that's connected to it, and just have a single export so you can take it out and load it back in. Previously, if you wanted to do something like this, you really had to understand all the different things you had to take out and bring back in, and you'd have to do them separately. So uh, probably not something you're using on a daily basis, but it's an enhancement and a better way of kind of dealing with importing and exporting features. When you do the import, you have the option to selectively import things as well. So I could certainly export everything, and then upon import, just choose what it is that I want. Again, always refer to our help documentation, which kind of goes over these things in more detail as well. All right, let's see. Place remove couplings, favorites. Okay, just a few more to check off the list here. As far as something new, since we did introduce system families, we have add remove unions for system families. This is again based off the electrical tool, since that's all family based. So basically this tool allows you to place unions or couplings along system families. It'll work with duct and pipe. And then you can also delete them as well. So that tool's in there. I'm not going to go into that just because the system family thing, I don't think it's worth spending too much time in right now. Family browser now has a load favorites option. So if you always had a standard amount of families that you always wanted to just pull in, you could highlight them. You'll see them in your favorites tab here, and then you can just click load favorites and it'll load everything in that list. So small little enhancement there, but it's a good one. All right, the last one here, that's a good one to show. Let me go to a plan view here. Okay, so for place sleeves, so we added an option to not require a host to place a sleeve. So the use case would be you're working off of a DWG background or no background at all, or whatever, just you don't have a wall to place a sleeve. So what you can do here is say not to require a host. You still defined your width. Here you're going to have to define your actual length because we can't calculate it because there's nothing to calculate it against. And now it allows you to place the sleeve along the run. So I'll just place it off to the side here. And there's my sleeve. Kind of a relatively small enhancement, but I know this was brought up a lot when working with DWG backgrounds. Question about the favorites option. Is it per job or universal? This is a workstation config with your family browser and how it's set up. So this would be per user. Yeah, so user 1 may have these favorites, user 2 has something else. It's up to you on how you set this up. All right, so that was all of the new things. So I'll kind of try to breeze through some of the improvements we made. Some of these, maybe I'll show, probably a bunch of them. I'm just going to try to explain what they do so I can get through this list. Starting with layout points. So a common thing that people were doing with points is they were creating their own types, which was fine, not a big deal. But the problem is if I wanted to create a custom point and use my point placement tool, it would not show up on this list. So now if I want to take this point here and call it Adams point, now we dynamically read this list. So when I go to my place points feature, called me a liar. Why is that not there? Oh, I know why, because it's EM point. I don't know where that came from. I have no idea what that is. All right, try it again. Atom point and EV point. I don't know what EM point is. So there's my atom point that I just made, and then I can come in here and place it. So not only can I see that from my place point tool, but I can also see it from here. So this would come into play when you're importing points. So if I want to import atoms points, so this would also be if you want to create a type called import points or something. You can create your own type, whatever you want to name it, and then you can use that as an option to bring it in. The other point related tool is oftentimes, here, let me just pull this down. Oftentimes you're going to have points that are in an error state. These could be most likely nested points that just don't have numbers. Previously, you weren't able to export points within an error state, but now you can select things as long as they are not in an error state, and you can export them out without error. So basically allows you to export what's good and leave the rest there to be addressed at a later time. And then the last enhancement specifically for ITM hangers is the description field. We actually are also going to address the layer field as well, but we just did description. Right now or previously, this is just a hard-coded value. If you want to change that description field, you can now go into our settings here and basically use either a hard-coded value, or you can actually use parameters or a concatenation of parameters. Let's see if I can pick something off the list just so you can see it change here. I don't know what's going to have a value. Let's do family, just to put something in there. So as I go down here, you'll see now my description's family. So it just gives you that control there. Question on sleeves. Information to build a tag only allows for center line and not bottom. I think the question is creating a tag to identify bottom of sleeve. Yeah, okay. So there would be nothing the way I would handle that is I would probably just use like parameter sync to calculate bottom of sleeve, basically center minus, sleeve radius or something like that. I won't go into it now, but there's nothing specific that we put in for that, but you should be able to do it with parameter sync and just calculate bottom of sleeve value, write it to a shared parameter, and then you can tag it that way. Joe, if you want, feel free to reach out to us, and then we could get on a call and I could probably show you an example of that. I have experienced errors when exporting points as a TFL. It tells me that the file is locked and will not let me export. All right, so the question is on exporting. This one's saying specifically TFL, and it's saying the file is locked. So when you export, I know there's a limitation on exporting to shared files. So oftentimes you're going to export to some SharePoint folder or Dropbox folder or something, because that's your company folder structure. You're using that. If you do get an error and the file's locked, I'm willing to bet that it's because it was written to some type of share folder, which it's writing the file and then getting synced, and then it's causing the file to get locked. So we created the file, the share file grabbed it, and now it's locked and can't write to it. Best way to test that, write it to your desktop, as long as you're not doing any funky desktop syncing, and see if the error goes away. If it does go away, then I'm going to say that's the problem. If that's not the case, please reach out to us through support, and we can take a look at it. uh, what is the Foresight project and why do I need to assign it to a project? So let me go through. I'm going to address that Foresight project right at the end, just because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and lose time, but I will address that in a second. What is the purpose of exporting grid as opposed to exporting points? Okay, that's a good question. So we have two export functions here, export points, export grid. So the purpose of export grid is it exports in the format that you have the grid set to. So what happens is, I believe for Trimble units, they want a YXZ format, not XYZ format. So if you use export points, it's always going to put it XYZ. If you want YXZ, you could switch the columns around here, and then this export grid will export that exact format. Likewise, if I started hiding columns or something like that, that export grid function basically exports what you have shown. So that's the purpose of it. Good question. All right, let's get through renumbering. So just show a few of these with renumbering. Inside here, we have a couple of options for renumbering by parameters, and we also have PowerShell in here. So this was the request was being able to renumber families and have the same kind of common numbering functionality as we did with ITMs that you can do here. So basically, this acts the same way, but just gives you the ability to use parameters. One of the use cases that you could come up with for mechanical is our hanger families have a built-in configuration ID parameter. So if you look at this, just find the parameter if I can, right there. So evolve configuration ID. We generate a unique value based on the type of hanger, the size, the width, the rod length, all those values. So we do that so when you schedule hangers, you can say, oh, I have 5 of these at this configuration. Well, if you wanted to number your hangers and have them have identical numbers based on their config, you could now use the renumbering command, make a rule here and say use evolve. It's not showing up, but it's there, configuration ID. So by setting that parameter, that's kind of guaranteeing, because evolve in the background setting that, that's going to guarantee that that'll identify identical parts. So it's just a use case for using parameters, but you can use any parameter or combination of that. Single numbering option here just basically prevents you from numbering things twice. And then there's a couple of renumbering options now from the spool manager or the prefab manager. You can renumber right from here, select your spool and renumber. And then there's also renumber spools when created, and then you can kind of set your value here. Sorry, I just thought I saw some questions come in here. Oh, how about renumbering points when you have mixed content like RFA and ITMs? Renumbering points when you have a mixed content. Not sure exactly what that question is referring to. I'm assuming the question is you want to renumber a mix of something like this and this, and you kind of say that, and you're probably expecting these to also be renumbered. I'm assuming that's, yeah, points are built into ITM hangers. Yeah. Yeah, we're controlling the numbering for ITMs because these are calculated points and there's no exact, it's not an actual point in the model. So that would be a limitation that's built in. Why does creating empty project populate project parameters from evolve shared parameter text file? So if that question is, I think, referring to just when you start a new project, why are you getting all these EM parameters? I'm assuming, yeah. So right now we do that on demand as a new project's created because it ensures that the various project parameters that we need for spooling, packaging, what have you, those types of things are all automatically loaded in there so we can guarantee that those tools work. It has been suggested that we provide some type of option to turn that off so you don't necessarily inject those parameters on demand. So that's something we'll look into. But that's why it does that. All right, so we're getting close on time. So just a few other things to cover. For sheet creation, this is good to know. Let me go to a sheet. If I have any, I don't have any created yet. So let's just open it up. I think this should be updated in here. Okay. So any sheet creation tools. So you have spools, packages, locations. Previously, when you had when you were setting up your title blocks, there were two different families. One we called it, excuse me, a view window. I think one was a spool window. They were essentially the same family, but one of them was specific for creating assembly views. The other one was for creating regular Revit views. So obviously spool tool was used the spool window, and then locations and packages used the other. So we've done a couple of things here. One, it's worth noting, we maintained backwards compatibility. So this does not affect any previous job. You can still use your old title blocks or anything you have. Everything will still work as is. This is just an enhancement going forward. So you can certainly update things if you need to or want to. So one of the things we did is we revamped the family itself. It's one family. It does everything. It's basically got the options of both, and it's built in here. So you'll see you have standard views here, and then you have assembly views down here. So based on what you're trying to select and configure, you can just do this from the single family. Also know that we enhanced the sheet creation method. So spooling will actually have a performance increase. You should, if you're doing auto annotation and dimensions and things like that, you should actually see a significant improvement on speed when generating sheets and views. And on top of that, you can actually mix and match regular views and assembly views. So if you wanted to generate an assembly view with the background in it or something, you can actually do that and configure a title block, which will do both views. You just got to come in here and say, this is an assembly view. I can come in and say, I want a plan view instead. And this will generate a standard Revit view instead of an assembly view with the spooling tool. So obviously only with spooling can you mix and match spooling and regular views. Locations and packages would just be regular views. Another enhancement is we can place elevations, and we previously had sections. Now we can do elevations as well. Your same visibility controls where you have to define your north, south. One thing you'll notice is like the elevation views has the arrow pointing out, where a section view will have the arrow pointing in, try to give you some visual indicator of what you have. Also, there's some other built-in error states. So if you have multiple selections, it'll actually tell you and visually show you that there's an issue with it. So we're just trying to improve just usability from the user perspective, and just kind of give you some more visuals on what you're creating. Another thing with the family is you can actually assign your detail number. So what that would be when you generate a view or when you generate a sheet and it's got views on it, they all have numbers, you know, view 1, view 2, view 3. If you have a standard way of numbering these, you could come in here and say, this is number 1, this is number 2, and number 3. So that will, when it generates these views, this will always be numbered 1, 2, 3, etc. So if it's blank, we just number it as we create it. You get what you get, but you do have the option to number them yourself. The last thing here is the option to scale to fit. I think we have another couple enhancements that will come around this. We're kind of trying to standardize on our sheet creation and view creation methods and settings. So there'll be some more enhancements down the line, but you can actually turn on or off scale to fit from here as well. Other than that, everything is the same. Again, it's just merging those two families together with all the options here, but the way you configure it and set it and assign view templates and all that stuff, none of that's changed. And again, you don't have to make any changes to what you already have. 6.2 will work with previous configurations. Okay, a couple of questions. Can the export utility export schedules? No, it cannot. But I'll write that down because that would be a pretty cool one to do. So nope, we do not export schedules currently, but we'll look into that. Is it possible to set the numbering to reset to 1 at a certain point? Yeah, it's come up a few times now. Currently, no, that you have to go back to the config and reset it, but we'll look into that as far as a reset numbering option there. That's come up a few times now for sure. Can the columns in a BOM be set to a given width? I always have to adjust after the sheet creation because they come in a varying width and have to adjust manually in each spool. So let me see. Let me do this. Let me make a sheet on something here. Let me open this sheet. I thought it didn't have a sheet in here. Oh, there we go. Okay, I have a sheet. So the column widths for these schedules should be driven by the view template for the schedule. So if I don't know if I have fabrication spool BOM, pipe BOM. I don't know if it's this. But when I create a view template from this view, that view template is controlling the widths of these columns. So I believe the answer to can you control those widths, it's update your BOM, update your view template, and you should see that fixed. So if you're always seeing something like this, you should, it's probably because the view template was created, you know, when it wasn't really formatted well. And then maybe later you've changed your view, but you should be able to make a schedule, format it the way you want it, create the view template, and it should correct that. How can we preset viewports in a spool template to define scale? So what you're going to want to do are two things. On your views that you generate here, make sure scale to fit is off, and then make sure your view template that you're assigning to it has a scale set to it. So let me go to my spool here. So this example, this is coming in custom because the view scale was set to custom, but inside the view template itself, fabrication spool plan. Oops. I don't know why that's not showing up here, but inside the view template itself, make sure your scale is checked here. So the two things, your title block is set to not to be custom scale to fit, and then this scale is actually set to something, and that should preset your views. Good question. All right, last few things getting right at time here. Let's see. Grids, a couple of grid enhancements. I'm not going to go through those. In the hanger placement, you can turn off clash detection. That'll just improve performance. So you don't have to do clash detection. We did make an update to our modify ribbon, just kind of clean it up a bit. Minor thing there. And then we have a handful of some bug fixes that you can read through as well. So that really covers the 6.2 update. Again, if anybody finds any issues or has any trouble with any of the features or enhancements, please reach out to us, and we'll help you the best we can. Next update, we are going to probably do another update in a fairly short time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. It'll be similar to a 6.2. There'll probably be a few new things, a few bug fixes, a few enhancements, something relatively small. Before I forget, so the question about Foresight project, let me just address that in the last bit. So when you open up a project, you'll get prompted with this. You have to set a project to it. What that does is on the Foresight website, we actually just recently, over the last few months, released our shop product. A few other products are coming online as we speak. Basically, assigning the model to a project connects it to these other modules. So what you can do if you're not using any of these modules, you can create just a single project for your company. So you could come into my projects and say, this is our working project. And I'll assign myself. So you can make one project, and what you'll want to do is open up that project and assign all your company, everybody in your company to that project. And if you do that, whenever anybody opens up the model for the first time and they come into here, they'll see that working project. And they can just assign all the models to that. So you can assign multiple models to the same project. If you're not using any of the online tool, the web tools, it doesn't do anything. And even if you decide to start using some of the web tools, you can always change it. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have other issues with the projects, reach out to support. We can give you some more information about it and talk about it that way too. So I think that pretty much covers everything. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Adam. And we will be following up with the recording later today. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook to keep up to date with all of our webinars. Thanks, everybody. Bye.